Hello, it's Kat, and welcome to the live. If this is your first time being in a public live, look down below and um, understand that this is a public live. And if you interact with the live, meaning if you comment and stuff, that you can be seen. If you're here just to watch it, I think you'll be fine. And this is, guys, can you tell me if you can hear me and see the the page itself? Hold on. I think I'm having some problems. Oh, good. I am up. They did fix it. I'll be right back. All right. Hello, it's Kat. And I am one of the admins here. And if this is your first time to a live, welcome to a public live. Please understand that if when you're in the public live, if you're going to comment, people can see your comments. I think if you're just going to sit here and watch it, it's not a big deal. And I also want to let you know, if you look below on this, there may be some other things you want to think about. You can message me and I will message you back. Tonight's topic is going to be about strategy with abusers. And I'm Kat. I'm a survivor expert with lived experiences in coercive control abuse. And so I talk about it rather openly because I want other people not to feel alone in the world and to understand that there's other people that have gone through what they're going through, because abuse is not something we talk about, and especially coercive control, because coercive control is the underpinning of all abuse. Then we really need to be talking about that. But tonight's topic is on strategy. And so some of the strategies that we run into is just trying to placate the abuser or trying to manipulate our way out of this because we don't understand what we are in, which is why I talk a lot about the Biderman's work, because that's coercive control, and narcissistic traits, because that gives us insight into how these people behave and the tactics they use on us for us to try to negotiate with them in a way that protects who we are as good people who are getting taken advantage of, or we've run into them either in our homes or in our workplaces or just life in general, churches, anywhere. And until you have been in the sights of somebody who has their target on you, you don't quite understand what you're in until you're not in it or until you get educated, which is something I try to do on this page. I also try to educate on self-care, because this is a very complicated subject to talk about. So tonight, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about strategy. And if we look into the words of Musashi, Musashi is Miyamoto Musashi said, "You can win battles by knowing the enemy's timing, using timing which the enemy doesn't expect." And that's like your things that, if you understand and know about the gray rock or the yellow rock, those are strategies that we use when we're with the abuser. We also need to know our audience, which I think people don't tend to do, which is, this is, well, I can give you strategies about this kind of stuff. It's up to you to figure out, because each one of us understands and needs to listen to our gut, because our gut will keep us safe in these relationships with abusers. At the same time, we may understand them to be a certain way with us and a certain way with other people. That gives you an understanding of who they are. And in Musashi's book, there was a book written that's the Book of Five Rings. If you look up his book, it's a really nice read, I think. Although I did study martial arts, so I have a understanding of it and I like it. But earth is the groundwork for that study. So when you've been in there and all of a sudden you find yourself in these abusive kind of relationships, you understand that groundwork of coming out of it, or coming into an understanding of what this kind of abuse looks like. And so you have that groundwork, that you've been on the ground with these people and understand who they are. If we look at water, which is one of Musashi's talks, he's books. So there's 5 books in there. Water is another one where he's talking about the warrior's attitude through understanding strategy. So water is fluid. So we understand that we need a different attitude, which is kind of what the Gray Rock is about, and understanding our audience. And then there's fire, which is fighting based on our knowledge and understanding of earth and water. Wind is the differences of Musashi's style, which is what he's saying there is, know the difference between your style, the way that you work, have an understanding of how you work and how you show up and how another person shows up, so that you, if it's the abuser, so that you know what you need to think about. And then there's the no thing, which describes the way of nature, or the understanding of unthinking. Now, to kind of put that all in kind of light and hopefully tie it together, I can say that when I studied martial arts, that I didn't have an understanding of this kind of thought process. But when you're a white belt first learning, you get taught things and you're not very good at it. And when you get better and you can do the steps you need to be to go from a white belt to an orange belt, then you were humbled again, because you don't know very much from being a white belt to an orange belt. And that goes all the way up until you learn to and become a black belt. But once you become a black belt, you understand that you probably missed a lot of what you learned in those other belts as you're learning the next belts that you're coming into. I stood across from a 8th degree black belt, watching him do a white belt form, which is a series of maneuvers that's done a certain way depending on your school. And it looked beautiful. It looked perfect. I was like, I couldn't have done that. And I was a black belt, and there's no way. He did it just perfectly. And when I said to him, you did that outstandingly, he said to me, my hand was like this and it should have been like that. And those are the little nuances. And that's what I'm talking about when you start to understand, like, we know who they are. Is like the person that was abusive to me, one of the people that was abusive to me, liked to hum after he was extremely cruel, as if he felt like that he had won. And so instead of getting hurt by that, I protected myself, understanding that that's who that person is. That's how that person shows up. And so when he does that, I'm going to do this. And so at some point I said to them, knock it off. I'm not listening to you sitting there and acting as if you won while someone else is in tears. that's inappropriate. They didn't care, but I said it for me. And so it's part of that groundwork of study in understanding who the abuser is. Met another person that was abusive, and this is when I was young, and they were chasing me around. They had their fist up in the air. I thought they were going to hit me, and I turned around and said, "Don't you hit me." And they said, "I wasn't going to hit you. I was just mad." And I said, "Well, what's that?" That was calling out that chaos. And I didn't know it at the time. But when I look back on that, I understood that I was speaking up and against that. Now, I'm not saying that if you're in a relationship with somebody who is physically abusive, you do these things. I think that's part of the knowing of your gut. There is one instant when I had come home and was unaware that somebody had been stalking me and came in through the unlocked door, and I wasn't expecting them. And so that made me think differently about my approach on how to keep myself safe. So that's some of your strategy. And we don't talk about strategy because we're just trying to live in that moment and survive that moment. And I think that when you start to get into these ideas of how to get out of this, you need to do some thought process about how I'm going to be in this until I can get out. And some of that is strategy. So when I would talk to somebody about what was going on at home, and I would come back into my home and the abuser would be there, I would physically hold something over my heart to protect my heart from them, because I had just been talking about something with a friend of mine about what had happened, and I was trying to keep myself safe. So there's strategy in being a warrior. There's strategy in, after something has happened that's terrible, in taking time in that unthinking, in time to rebuild who you are. And I think it's important for us to understand that in order to fight, we have to have some awareness about how is this relationship causing my groundwork, my earth, to be unsteady. How is this relationship with this person causing me to not be able to have a flow and understanding? How is it keeping me from being able to fight in a way that is going to keep myself safe? I mean, I talked yesterday. I did a little video about conflict and trouble, and I was thinking about afterwards that it didn't really hit conflict because a lot of people don't know how to be in conflict because they lose themselves in conflict. And the thing about Masashi that's nice is that he fought and won and won and won and won until he lost. And it was in that realizing that he wasn't taking in that timing that was that saying I gave you. He wasn't taking in the timing of the enemy, of who they are and how they show up, into being something different so that I could protect myself. So you see, I have my father, who I talk about sometimes. He had decided that he wanted to tell me that he was trying to get me to do this task, which is the forcing of trivial tasks, trivial demands, which is in Biderman's work. He was trying to tell me to do something, and I knew he wanted something, but I couldn't understand what it was that he wanted. He kept asking for somebody's phone number, and I felt like I was getting dragged into something and I didn't want to be in it. And I couldn't understand why, if he wanted the phone number, why he just didn't ask another person for the phone number. And it's because it wasn't about the phone number. What it was about is it was about seeing if he could get me to do one trivial thing for him, because then he would know that he would have more control over me, which is why it's important for you to understand the Biderman's work. That's part of that groundwork I'm trying to get you to study. The narcissistic traits is some groundwork I'm trying to get you to understand so that you can go, oh, that's what that is in real life. This isn't about perfection. This is about helping you to grow some discipline to be able to have boundaries so that when you say no, it's a no. And when you say yes, it's a yes. And that you're not saying yes to something that you would really like to say no to. And I think those kinds of things are important to us to understand. So when I didn't give my dad the information that he wanted, which was the phone number, my mother had died 2 years earlier. He said, I bet you miss your mom. And I was like, why are we bringing up my mom? Because I won't give a phone number. And I immediately got upset because my mom had passed and I missed her. And then I realized he was trying to hurt me. And I said, okay, I'm done with this conversation. And I said, I'm going to let you go and I'll talk to you soon. And I hung up and I waited a couple of days. And I talked to my dad openly about abuse. And he taught me a lot of things that I didn't understand about the world and abuse in these discussions. What he didn't realize is that I was going to use what he taught me against him. And so I called him back up and I said, don't you ever do that again to me. Don't you ever bring up my mom to try to hurt me. You are my dad. You are not somebody who is supposed to come and try to hurt me. If you want a phone number, ask one of your sons who lives across the street. They'll be happy to give it to you. I'm not getting involved. End of story. And that was a good boundary for me to set with my dad because he understood he wasn't going to get anywhere that he was trying to get. That is knowing your enemy, knowing who they are and how they're showing up in your life, and then coming up with ways that you can work to help defend yourself, which is some of the things that I want to teach in classes that I want to give here online and also in events out in the world. There'll be some information coming up about that. Me and Sam will be doing them. But I just want to let you know that in this talk, those are the kinds of things I'm wanting to drive. So I want you to have this awareness of who am I? How is this affecting me with this person? You know, I had a different person who said something to me about they used to always say, I forgot the name of it. They used to always say to me, I was in trouble and that I needed to learn a lesson, but they would never talk to me about what the lesson was. And so there's like this guessing kind of thing. And that's what abusers do. They want to see where they can push you and how they can push you. And so I just gave up. I was like, I don't care. They told all kinds of people that I needed to learn a lesson. And I said, well, whatever. They gossip back to me and tell me whatever. And I'd say, whatever. And that's kind of how I don't have that person in my life anymore. I won't allow that kind of activity in my life. And that's a hard boundary, but it's a good boundary for me. And so in this talk, I'm hoping that I'm getting through to you on, think of the words of, I think it's Sun Tzu, which he said, think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world. Because see, when you think lightly, if you can get this groundwork done, if you can get this understanding of having a warrior attitude and understanding strategy so that when you come up against these abusive kind of peoples, you can figure out how to fight. Because sometimes you need that that unthinking, that getting out of a situation and not being there so that you can contemplate how you're going to strategize about this, to understand, the wind, and um, is understanding the strategy of your opposer. So I think when you start doing those things and then you start thinking lightly of yourself and more deeply of the world, then when you know yourself, you can come out into the world with more compassion, because you have compassion and love for the person that you are. And that's important. I know I gave you a lot of information, but I'm hoping that you see that this is complicated. This is complicated because we have a society that tells us a certain way that we need to be. And we don't have and haven't been given the information of Biderman's work to understand what that all entails. So when you understand that isolation doesn't mean they're just keeping you somewhere where you can't get out, although that's a big one. It can also mean that they're keeping you away from people who would support you in your endeavors. That monopolization of your perception is them telling you and how they see the world, and applying pressure to you in order for you to see the world that way. You can go all the way down into all of those. I'm going to look and see if I've got some comments that I need to address. And if not, I am going to go on into the end of this, which is what I want for you is, if coercive control is the underpinning of all abuse, and we have abuses in our homes, in churches, in schools, in society, in government, in courts, in politics. And if we can see that abuse while it's going on, and we can make strategy for ourselves in order to withstand what is coming at us, then we can have a better world, in the fact that we understand the strategy and the tactics that the abuser is using against us and for their own gain. You see, if I think about the incident that happened with my dad, I understand that he wanted me on his side. But he wasn't asking me to be on his side. He was trying to force a trivial demand instead of having a conversation. These are the kind of people you can't have conversations with. At least I don't think you can, because you have to understand who they are. And if you can have those conversations, then you need to understand what the rest of it is so that you can see it when it's coming along. I hope that helps. If you want to find Musashi Miyamoto, actually it's Miyamoto Musashi, The Book of Five Rings by Stephen Kaufman. Look for it. I'll put a little link on it. I don't get paid for that. It's just a book I've read about strategy. And I think when you apply it to understanding what Biderman's work is, and what narcissistic abuse or narcissistic traits are, then you can start to see how these people behave in your world, and you can start to make boundaries so that you don't have that conflict going inside of you, but you understand that they're going to have a conflict with you because you're not behaving the way that they want you to behave. And that's okay. You don't have to please everybody. Who you need to please is yourself, in protecting yourself. And once you have that, then you can have compassion for other people who can't necessarily please themselves or please others. I don't think I said that the way I want to. But anyway, take care, and please know you're loved and cared for. Cass going to go get some break. Bye-bye.